Illegal immigrants stole this man's identity over and over again to get work in his name. So why won't the government just arrest his identity thieves where they work?
IRS doesn't want that door opened. Why? They're making billions of dollars.
We also investigate a new device on the market in Tampa Bay that jams red light cameras so red light runners do not get caught.
There's nothing illegal, despite what they're intending to do, there's nothing illegal about them.
And this 30-year-old Democrat could stun Republicans next week by winning a race once thought impossible.
These Republicans have been feuding with each other much more than they've been attacking Jon Ossoff.
Plus, in the race to replace Governor Scott, we'll go one-on-one with Democrat Andrew Gillum. But we'll start with the big changes in Washington on matters of money, power, and politics. So the president just shifted his position on Syria, Russia, China, and NATO.
I said it was obsolete. It's no longer obsolete.
So a lot of people are wondering what drove this change. Cynics have speculated that Trump is trying to pivot and talk tough on Russia to counter the allegations that Trump world colluded with Russia to meddle in the election. Others, critics, have speculated that Trump flips his positions because he's just making it up as he goes along. But I think something else is happening here, and it gives the president a chance to reboot his agenda and gain some ground in the polls. And it all goes back to those reports of Trump's top strategists clashing with Trump's son-in-law.
It's never a good idea to get on the wrong side of your boss's family. I think it's a fairly good rule to follow.
You also do not want to upstage your boss. That's another good rule to follow.
Send in Steve Bannon.
And though Bannon couldn't stop Saturday Night Live from casting Bannon as Trump's evil puppet master.
I've had a long day. I'm tired and cranky, and I feel like I could just freak out on somebody.
Then maybe you should call Australia.
It certainly did Bannon no favors, especially with all the other comics and pundits who portrayed Trump as Bannon's puppet.
Okay, Donald, that's enough fun for tonight. Can I have my desk back?
Yes, of course, Mr. President. I'll go sit at my desk.
Then after reports of Bannon tussling with Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, well, Trump appears to have kicked Bannon out of the circle of trust, saying, "I like Steve, but you have to remember he was not involved in my campaign until very late." And as if he didn't get the hint from that, he added, "Steve is a good guy, but I told them to straighten it out or he will." Translation, Bannon's stock is falling. There appears to be a power shift within the White House, and we know President Trump can be strongly influenced by people close to him and people he trusts. For example, he was all for waterboarding, but then General Mattis said it doesn't really work, and then Trump deferred to him. So now, at the same time, we're seeing a shift in Trump's inner circle. We're also seeing a striking shift in policy, and the video of the chemical gas attack appears to have been part of the catalyst in this. And while critics are ripping Trump for waffling and wavering, he's also shown that he can change his perspective as the world changes around him. And that can help a president who is battling the perception that he's too rigid and too inflexible. And on that point, the president, of course, watches the polls, and he knows things have not been going his way, and bet that he's paying close attention to what's happening right now in the Atlanta area, because we have a special election to fill Health Secretary Tom Price's seat in Congress. It's an overwhelmingly Republican district that could go to a Democrat. So this is a race. Watch this one. It can be a canary in the coal mine for President Trump. And we're going to show you what we're finding in our polling on this one in just a moment. First, here's Jonathan Seri on why Republicans could get stunned on Tuesday.
Democrats are eyeing a congressional seat up for grabs next Tuesday in a special election. The affluent and highly educated Atlanta suburbs that make up Georgia's 6th district lean establishment Republican. Donald Trump won the district by just 1.5 percentage points in 2016. 30-year-old Jon Ossoff, a documentary filmmaker and former congressional staffer, has raised more than $8 million. Conservative attack ads have tried to portray him as inexperienced, digging up an old Star Wars parody he made during college.
I'm Han Solo, captain of the Millennium Falcon.
While Democrats seem to be rallying around Ossoff, the field of 18 candidates also includes 2 independents and a crowd of Republicans trying to stand out as their party's frontrunner to fill the seat vacated by Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price.
Haven't we had enough of the politicians who talk a big game and never deliver?
Stop Karen Handel, a big spending career politician we can't trust with our money.
Issues on voters' minds range from health care to tax reform.
Transportation, education, infrastructure improvement, putting people back to work.
I kept hearing we need to put money here, money there from both sides. I didn't hear anybody really saying where this money comes from.
This country's so divided right now that I think it would be great to see somebody that could work across the aisle.
And our Fox 13 pollster Matt Towery has been tracking this particular race closely, and based on his numbers and the other data and information he has, he says the Democrat here, Ossoff and former B-list Han Solo, has a 50-50 chance of winning this Republican seat next week without a runoff. And politically, the Atlanta area is quite similar to the Tampa Bay area. Both can also be bellwethers and predictors of things to come. Speaking of things to come, coming up, we're going to show you how this new device evades red light cameras by overexposing the picture so you can't read the license plate. We'll show you who's selling this and what it costs, and we'll ask our legal expert Jeff Brown if this red light camera jammer is legal. Well, supporters say red light cameras prevent T-bone collisions and help save lives. You have critics, though, who say they punish drivers who make an imperfect judgment within a second of a light change. Well, either way, there's this new device that can help drivers evade red light cameras and avoid the citations. So Marissa Lynn found out how this works and asked whether it's legal.
Craig, it's one of the most frustrating decisions you have to make as a driver. The light turns yellow. Do you slam on your brakes or do you try to make it through? Adding to the pressure, red light cameras that could send you a ticket in the mail. A new product hitting shelves in the Bay Area is trying to beat the system in place. These cameras are watching you, especially if you run a red light.
People don't like the fact that this is the big brother, these are cameras, it's causing people to stomp on their brakes because they're afraid of getting a ticket.
When you're caught on camera, that video is sent to the local police department, which then issues you a citation. Now there's a way to possibly get around all that. The no photo camera jammer. It's a device placed under the car's license plate. When it senses a red light camera flash, it flashes back. It's a flash that's so fast it's invisible to the naked eye. This video has been slowed down so you can see it in action.
When other light is introduced from another angle, it'll throw the camera's settings off and make the license plate completely unreadable.
Guaranteed, or the maker will pay for the cost of your ticket. American Traffic Solutions is the company that runs the red light cameras in both Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa. They say of the 125,000 violations caught on camera last year, there were only 65 times when the videos and pictures were too overexposed to determine the license plate. To be clear, this doesn't just include those overexposures caused by the jammer. In a statement from the company, it reads, "This type of device has no more of an impact on violation capture than plates being blocked by other vehicles, plates being unreadable due to poor lighting, or plates being misread due to some other type of obstruction." But is it legal? Tampa defense attorney Jeff Brown says yes, since this device is placed under a license plate, it complies with Florida law for now.
The law says that on your license plate, there has to be a white light to make the license plate visible by 50 feet. And you can't have anything covering it so that you can't read the plate. That's all the law requires. And so there's nothing illegal, despite what they're intending to do, there's nothing illegal about this.
Is it worth the price? The jammer costs about $400, and the cost of running a red light, $158. American Traffic Solutions says there are still ways to determine a license plate number if it's been obstructed for whatever reason. Their cameras not only capture video, but also 2 high-resolution images. Even with just a few characters on the plate, the company has the tools that can, through the process of elimination, figure out the registered owner of the vehicle. Craig?
All right, thank you, Marissa. Now, coming up, we're going to show you how our federal government could find and stop identity thieves, but will not take action on it. But first, we'll sit down with the first big-name Democrat to enter Florida's race for governor. We'll put Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum to to the test. Okay, time now to put Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum to the test. Thank you for joining us, Democratic candidate for governor.
Thank you for having me, Craig. I appreciate you taking time.
Let's start with taxes. Yes or no, are the people of Florida overtaxed?
Well, considering the fact that this state does not have a state income tax, and I have to say the folks who are most taxed are those who consume goods, because our tax system is structured on sales tax. I think we've got an interesting income system in this state, and we're trying to do the best that we can. The good news is that the state this year is dealing with a pretty good surplus.
But the forecasts show tax collections are going down over the next couple of years. So would you cut taxes, raise taxes, or keep them exactly where they are?
Well, I mean, I think you obviously have to answer those questions more thoroughly once you get there and begin to analyze where the budget is and where the priorities of the government are. I mean, I think we could probably manage the state's priorities given the resources that we have. Much of them, for me, being around public education and making sure that we adequately fund that system such that we provide an opportunity to learn for every child that calls Florida home.
You're personally dealing with an email controversy. So your office in Tallahassee, your government office, sent out some emails that were political in nature. What went wrong? How did that happen?
Well, I'll tell you, my office shared with the public that I was the only speaker from the state of Florida to speak at the Democratic convention. We shared that Joe Biden was going to be in my city, and we encouraged people to go and see him. And unfortunately, the Republicans have found a little bit of fodder in that. I decided to reimburse the entire system. Therefore, there are no victims to the process. But I get the fact that the Republicans are going to make as much hay over this as they can. It's
was
exactly,
it a mistake? Was it a mistake?
Absolutely, which we recognize. Yeah, but what you see happening now is that the Republican Party has decided, and the Republican Governors Association has decided, that I am a threat enough to them that they want to make it more of an issue.
You said you made a mistake. Was it technically a violation of law to send out a fundraising email?
Of course not. First of all, I never sent email raising money for myself. I wouldn't. The controversy that the Republican Party continues to kick around, again, is one that can be fully anticipated from them. And it is what happens when you challenge power.
Give me an example of a Republican that you most admire.
You know, I mean, obviously, a lot of us acknowledge the great work around bipartisanship and collaboration that I think during the time that we had President Bush in Washington. I know when you reflect on these things, it's difficult to say those were glory days, but compared to what we have right now, where people are not working well together at all, the bipartisanship we've seen, particularly in post-presidencies. You got the Clintons and the Bushes, both of them getting along very well.
President George W. Bush, the Republican you most admire?
No, I think the Republican I most admire would be President Lincoln.
You got me there. Okay, alive today. Alive today. How about alive today?
I mean, I think, so I'll tell you someone who I think deserves credit for speaking up for what it is that they believe and being unapologetic in so doing is Governor Kasich. He ran for president, obviously, for the Republican nomination. He's a governor who extended health care, even though he didn't agree with Obamacare at the time. He understood that the needs of his state came first.
Do you think we should continue the legal battle with Georgia over water on behalf of the seafood workers and fishermen in Franklin County?
I think the state of Florida has to do what it can to protect its clean water sources for its residents, but we also got to do what is required.
So continue the legal battle?
Well, I mean, I think we got to assess those options to see what our best prospects are, but we've got to do what is required. But the judicial
official in the case has already sided with Georgia. Are you throwing good money after bad if you keep up the fight?
Listen, we've got to do two things. One, we've got to make sure that we continue to protect access to Florida's clean water. Number two, we've got to be good stewards of the clean water systems that we have, right? I mean, we now have in this state the devaluation of appropriate regulation to ensure clean water is available. And we're seeing the impacts of that when you look at what's happening over in Lake Okeechobee. We've seen the impacts of when we have bad environmental stewardship on what has happened with the Everglades. And then we're spending billions upon billions and trying to accomplish something that could have been well maintained had we decided not to mess with and deregulate, frankly, around our environmental protections that have now caused injury, not only to our environment, but threats to people and to property.
Mayor Gillum, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, please check out our YouTube channel for much more of our interview with Mayor Gillum and a closer look at the race. Search for Craig Patrick's Money, Power, and Politics. There you go. Click subscribe at the top of the page. You'll also find our investigations of money and politics, which brings us to tonight's investigation of illegal immigrants, identity theft, and a problem the federal government could crack down on, but won't. You'll find victims in Tampa Bay and all across the nation. Randy Travis caught up with a man who got burned in the town of Villa Rica, Georgia.
So this is your life, or is this the other guy's life?
Well, this is the other guy's life affecting my life.
With a name like David Omlor, O-M-L-O-R, you'd think you'd have it all to yourself. Not even close.
There are a few illegitimate Dave Omlors out there.
If only it were a few. Last year, the Villa Rica tax accountant was laid off from a job he had held for 18 years. So he headed to the Labor Department to file for unemployment benefits. Instead, he only got a surprise.
I was told, well, you're still working. And I said, I am. And they said, yes, you're working at this construction company.
C.W. Matthews, one of the largest construction firms in Georgia. Not exactly David's area of expertise.
I'm wondering how I'm going to put food on the table. And the Department of Labor is telling me that I'm working.
Luckily, the Villa Rica Police Department took his complaint seriously, and with the help of the Cobb County Sheriff's Department, arrested the man they say was pretending to be David. His real name, Juan Estrada Hernandez, a native of Mexico who'd been working at C.W. Matthews for the last 10 years. You're pretty sure he stole your identity?
Yes, yes.
You think he's the only one?
I don't think he's the only one.
That's because when David asked Social Security to see where else his number may have been used, he got back this list of employers, 21 in all, including restaurants, staffing agencies, and other construction companies. Somehow David Omlar and his Social Security number have become the hardest working combo in Georgia.
It's a real burden. It's a huge burden, and now I have to contact 20 different companies where my identity has been used to gain employment. And there is no resource for me to go to. I have to do that myself.
It wasn't supposed to be like this.
So here's my driver's license and my Social Security card.
By law, most companies use a screening system called E-Verify, which requires newly hired employees provide official documents like a Social Security number. A vast majority of people here illegally are not allowed to apply for a number. So authorities say they either make one up or steal a real one, buying a fake card on the black market. But wait a minute. Surely the Internal Revenue Service had to notice that the same number was being used for all those jobs, often at the same time. All those other David Omlars had taxes taken out. So how come that branch of government didn't do anything? Easy answer, says immigration attorney Charles Cook. The IRS can't.
They're not allowed to talk to ICE. It's illegal for them to talk to ICE. They can't cooperate. They can't say, hey, ICE, we have 8 people paying taxes on the same Social Security number. Here's their addresses. They're literally, legally not allowed to do that.
So why not fix the problem? Cook believes he knows. Free money.
But IRS doesn't want that door opened. Why? They're making billions of dollars of money in taxes, particularly Social Security taxes, that will never have to be paid out to the people who actually put the money in.
According to the Social Security Administration, an estimated $11 billion in taxes are collected each year from people who are not legally allowed to be here, much less ever collect Social Security benefits. Like the only man accused so far of pretending to be David Omlar. Because he was able to work, Estrada Hernandez was able to build a life in Georgia. He's lived quietly in this hateful apartment, raising a family, all 3 American-born children. The 34-year-old father has been in jail without bond since his January arrest.
It tugs at your heart a little bit, but he's not the victim. The victim is me.
But after authorities finally tracked him down, Judge David Emerson had to decide whether to grant Estrada Hernandez bond and risk him not coming back for his trial.
He is originally from Mexico. However, he's lived in the U.S. almost half of his life. The last thing he wants to do is go back.
We will find out for sure when he goes to trial. Judge Emerson agreed to a $15,000 bond. Estrada Hernandez walked out of jail the same day.
It was hard enough to find this guy. when he was working here. It's ridiculous to give him bond. If he's an illegal, what identity does he have? He has my identity. If he shows back up, I'll be surprised. I'll really be surprised.
Okay, coming up, we'll explain where America's growing tensions with Russia and North Korea are taking us, what this means, and what to expect next week. Well, Senators Marco Rubio and Bill Nelson both supported President Trump's strike in Syria. Now, there's been some debate over whether the president needs buy-in from Congress, but Nelson says no, that the president does in fact have the authority to carry out a strike as he did without the consent of Congress. And here's how Nelson explains the message we're also sending to Syria and where we go from here.
If he continues to use chemical weapons, we will hit him and hit him hard. And my recommendation is if he does it again, we ought to knock out his entire Air Force. And we have that capability. You run a risk that you're going to run into a problem with the Russians. But at the end of the day, there's got to be a political settlement in Syria. And what the Russians are interested in, they want to keep their base there on the Mediterranean. And that can all be worked out in a political settlement.
Of course, we have escalating tensions in Syria and North Korea. Folks, that's our show. We'll continue to see you next week.